Revealed. How two brothers overcame poverty to build Adidas and Puma and shattered their family. In a small American town, shadows flickered over the local diner as two brothers huddled together, sketching dreams on greasy napkins. Andy and Rob were more than siblings. They were dreamers bound by ambition and the haunting echoes of their father's shoe repair shop. The smell of leather clung to them, reminding them that their roots ran deep in poverty, surrounded by the towering factories that never rested. Their laughter bounced off the checkerboard tiles, drowning out the clatter of plates, as they envisioned their future in athletic shoes. Just think, Andy. One day, people will be wearing our shoes. Rob grinned, his eyes sparkling with hope. Andy nodded, but deeper down, he sensed the fracture that their dreams might create. Little did they know, those dreams once interlaced with brotherly love would soon unravel into something unforeseen. As time passed, the brothers grew taller and their aspirations larger. Andy cherished the spirit of community. He wanted to uplift their town with shoes that could empower everyone. Rob, however, was drawn to the heat of competition, yearning for glory beyond the confines of their unassuming town. They transformed late-night diner conversations into battlegrounds of ideas, tensions sparking like fire. But the whispers in town, a rivalry brewing amidst their ambition, turned brotherhood into competition. It was the talk of the town. Have you heard about the brothers? Eyes filled with curiosity and greed preyed on their vulnerabilities as the business grew. With each passing day, their family shop echoed less with laughter and more with the weight of unspoken tensions. Friends, once allies, began to look on with envy as the brothers found success, and distaste replaced the admiration they had once shared. One night, amid a town celebration shining with lights and laughter, everything boiled over. The brothers stood in front of a crowd, celebrating their success, but the air turned thick with a sense of impending conflict. Fueled by relentless ambition, they clashed. Voices rose, fists clenched. The rift that had been simmering now exploded, filling the town square with whispers of betrayal and disappointment. "You're only in this for yourself, Rob," Andy shouted, his face flushed. The crowd gasped, the betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Rob's glare burned with indignation, as shockwaves traveled through the audience like a ripple in water. This was not just a clash of ideas. It was the unveiling of raw wounds, a public display of their battle for recognition, ripping apart the fabric of their family. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The next morning, as the sun lit up the dusty playground where they once played, realization dawned on them. That exhilarating night hung over them like a shroud. Was their ambition worth breaking their bond? Hope mingled with regret, but the roads ahead twisted into uncertainty. Tensions tightened. Their ambitions and dreams were caught in a crossfire between personal success and brotherhood. They stood teetering at the edge of something monumental. What they had built together stood to crumble into dust if they couldn't bridge the growing chasm. But just when clarity seemed to inch closer, a shocking family secret emerged, latent truths surging forth, turning their world upside down. New revelations would challenge all they believed about love, loyalty, and what it meant to succeed. Would they reforge their brotherhood, or would their dreams tear them apart irrevocably? The answers lay just beyond the horizon, waiting for them. The sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the little town as Andy and Rob met on the empty playground. The swings creaked, swaying in rhythm with the weight of unspoken words between them. Their childhood space felt foreign now, stained by the bitterness of their last encounter. Each brother stood, wrestling the tumult of emotions churning inside: pain, anger, confusion, each like a wild animal ready to break free. "Rob, we can't keep doing this," Andy finally said, his voice strained yet steady. "We're family. We should be lifting each other, not tearing each other down. Rob looked away, biting his lip. It's not that simple, Andy. I want to be more than just a kid from this town. I want to build something big. Something that lasts. And at what cost? Andy shot back, frustration bubbling over. You're willing to sacrifice everything we've worked for? This us means something. More than just shoes. The silence that followed was thick. They both stood lost in thought, remembering the late-night dreams that had once united them. The faint sound of laughter from the street lingered in the background, a painful reminder of what they were losing. Just then, a girl from their school, Sarah, approached, curious about their tense expressions. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes darting between the brothers. "Just brother stuff," Rob muttered dismissively. But Sarah wasn't having any of it. "You two are known for working well together. People look up to you both. You can't let a few disagreements ruin everything." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. They knew she was right, yet at the same time, the pressure of their dreams expanded the divide like an expanding balloon. "I just want what's fair," Rob replied, his voice softer yet edged with steel. "I want our names to mean something. I need to know I'm not just riding on your coattails." "I never thought of it that way." Andy looked down at the dirt, trying to will away the sting of Rob's words. "But I never wanted it to be a competition." As the sun slipped into the horizon, the brothers faced one another, and the emotional distance between them felt insurmountable. They could either choose to unite or allow ambition to drive them farther apart. And then, as if the universe had been weaving a different path for them all along, news broke that would change everything. A revered shoe manufacturer had plans to open a massive factory not far from their town. As whispers spread, so did opportunity and peril. Everyone in town buzzed with anxious energy, torn between hope and fear. But involved in that whirlwind were whispers of shady dealings, always lurking just beneath the surface. What if their childhood dreams became enmeshed in something dark? Could the factory bring salvation or ruin? "Rob, this factory, we need to come together on this. It might be the break we need," Andy suggested carefully. Rob's eyes narrowed. The flame of ambition ignited again. "Together?" he echoed, skepticism coating his voice. "What if we're on opposite sides of this?" Tension hung like a storm cloud above the brothers. As bonds hung in the balance, would they stand side by side against the looming threat of competition and corruption, or would ambition tear them apart once more? The weight of their past decisions loomed over them like an anchor, and with the arrival of the factory, choices positioned to alter their fates left them both unsettled. How would they navigate this impending storm? The air buzzed with uncertainty, setting the stage for an impending clash that would define them both. But in moments like these, one thing was clear. They couldn't run from the truth forever. An unexpected confrontation awaited them, one that would either heal their rift or shatter their world completely. The next morning, Andy stirred awake with a heavy heart. His mind replayed the night before's confrontation, the tension still thick in the air. Two brothers, once inseparable, now felt like strangers standing on opposite shores, waves crashing between them. He threw off the covers and sat up, feeling the cool breeze slip through the window. It was a new day, but everything felt the same, stifling and unresolved. Sliding into his shoes, Andy stepped outside. He took a deep breath, determined to find clarity. The town was alive with the sounds of distant laughter and the clattering of passing cars, but he felt separated from it all, as if he were watching life unfold through a glass window, unattainable and blurry. He knew he had to make a choice soon. Waiting would only deepen the gulf between him and Rob. "Hey, Andy," a voice called out. It was Sarah again, walking briskly toward him. She had an energy about her that shone even in the morning light, something infectious that made Andy feel a little lighter. "I heard about the factory plans," she said, her face bright with enthusiasm. "This is huge. What do you think?" "I don't know," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "Could be great for the town, but there's also a lot to think about, especially with Rob." "Don't let it slip away," she urged, her voice firm. "You can't fight progress. You need to make sure you and Rob find a way to work it out." "I know, he paused, searching for the right words. "I thought we were on the same page." Now, it feels like we're miles apart. Maybe you both need to talk it out. Brothers fight. It's what makes the bond stronger. But this is different, she said softly, her expression serious. You can't lose each other over something like this. Andy felt a flicker of hope. A spark ignited in the silence that lingered between him and Rob. Could they really pull together and navigate this mess? Later that afternoon, they met again, the sun hanging low and casting long shadows across the playground. This time, Rob sat on the edge of the slide, looking contemplative. The tension was still heavy, but it felt different now, charged with possibilities. About what Sarah said, Andy started, but Rob cut him off. I've been thinking, Rob admitted, furrowing his brow. Maybe I've been too focused on what I want. I just don't want history to bury us. I want to build something bigger than ourselves. But I also don't want to lose you. Andy clenched his fists, the honesty catching him off guard. I don't want to lose you either. But we have to find a way to do this together. If we're going to deal with this factory, we need to be a team, not rivals. Rob nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. You're right. Maybe there's a way to make this not just about us but about everyone in town. Their unspoken worries suddenly felt lighter, like steam dissipating in the air. With a shared look, hope flickered into existence between them. But just as they contemplated their newfound understanding, a figure emerged from the shadows, an old acquaintance, someone neither of them expected to see, with intentions that were anything but clear. Looks like you boys are having a little family reunion. Mind if I join? The stranger smirked, stepping closer. As both brothers froze, their resolve tested in an instant, an unsettling realization settled upon them. They were entering a game much larger than themselves, and now the stakes had just risen. Would this confrontation drive them together, or further apart? The sun painted the sky orange as questions hung in the air, thick and daunting. Who was this stranger, and what did he want? The stranger's voice was like a thunderclap, jolting Andy and Rob from the fragile moment they'd just begun to share. His smirk cut through the air, making Andy's stomach twist uneasily. Familiarity washed over him, but it wasn't the warm kind. This was someone from their past, a shadow from years ago that neither brother had anticipated or wanted to see again. Lex, Rob said, his voice low and tight with tension. What are you doing here? Lex stepped closer, his hands shoved casually into the pockets of his worn leather jacket. Just passing through. Heard some interesting rumors about that factory set to open nearby. He glanced from Andy to Rob, eyes glinting with mischief. Thought I'd see how my old friends were holding up. Andy felt the heartache of long-buried memories surfacing. Lex was a constant in their childhood, a friend who had walked a fine line between loyalty and trouble. He had a knack for exploiting vulnerabilities, and right now it was clear he was there to stir the pot. You've always had a nose for trouble, Lex, Andy said, trying to sound braver than he felt. But we're not interested in whatever scheme you're cooking up. Really? Lex raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Because from what I hear, this factory could change everything. New jobs, fresh faces, money flowing. It's a game changer, and you boys are on different sides. You might want to think about where your loyalties lie. Loyalties? Rob shot back, anger flashing in his eyes. We're brothers. This isn't some game to us. Isn't it? Lex laughed lightly, the sound grating against Andy's nerves. You both need to understand. Life doesn't wait for family feuds. In this town, you either play to win or get lost in the shadows. Lex stepped even closer, lowering his voice as if revealing a secret. But what you don't know is that I have a plan. A way for you both to come out on top. All it takes is a little persuasion, and maybe a few sacrifices. The palm of Andy's hand tingled with a growing thought: how could Lex ever be part of the solution? He and Rob had just begun scraping together their brotherly bond, and here was Lex, a wrench thrown into the works. The last thing they needed was temptation to derail their fragile path ahead. Stay away from us, Andy warned, fists clenched. We don't need your help. We're figuring this out on our own. But Lex merely laughed again, mocking the resolve in Andy's voice. You'll see, boys. Sooner or later, everyone needs a little help from someone like me. As Lex turned away, Andy felt the weight of his words settle like a stone in his chest. The brothers exchanged uneasy glances, the hope that had sparked moments before now feeling conditional, threatened. "Can we really get through this?" Rob asked, brow knitted in uncertainty. "Lex could tear us apart again. We have to stick together," Andy replied resolutely, fear piercing through him. "No matter what he throws at us." But as they watched Lex walk away, the darkness of uncertainty loomed heavy over their heads. Could they fight back against someone who had always thrived in chaos? Just as they turned to leave, Rob's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, eyes widening. "It's about the factory. They're holding an emergency town meeting tonight. We need to be there. Are you ready for this?" Andy asked, the question heavy between them. Rob took a deep breath, nodding. Suspicion laced through him, but a sense of unity surged in the wake of doubt. As they made their way to the meeting, the tension surrounding them felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. Both brothers understood that this was just the beginning of a battle they had no idea how to fight. What new challenges would come from that meeting? And could they truly put aside their differences before the past caught up with them? The community center loomed large as they arrived, its fluorescent lights spilling out onto the damp pavement. People were already gathering, their chatter echoing off the concrete walls. Andy and Rob exchanged a glance, the gravity of the moment hanging heavily between them. "What if this goes sideways?" Rob muttered, anxiety tracing his voice. "Then we face it together," Andy replied, trying to muster a confidence he didn't quite feel. He couldn't shake the image of Lex lurking at the edges, waiting for them to falter. As they stepped inside, a wave of voices pulled them in. Familiar faces turned towards them, neighbors, friends, even those they hadn't seen in years. The room buzzed with mixed emotions. Hope, anger, confusion. "Look at them," Rob whispered, nodding toward a corner where some old classmates stood, their expressions cautious but eager. "They're all feeling it too. Whatever happens tonight, it matters." Andy felt a swell of pride. They hadn't all stayed close, but there was still a bond, a shared past that connected them all. As they scanned the room, his gaze landed on Mrs. Hargrove, the town's unofficial historian and a keeper of many secrets. She caught his eye and offered a reassuring smile. That small gesture planted a seed of hope in his chest. Suddenly, the doors at the front opened, and the mayor strode in, flanked by a couple of local businessmen, their suits sharply contrasting the jeans and flannels most of the crowd wore. As the murmuring subsided, he raised his hands, urging silence. "Thank you for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady and warm. "We stand on a precipice. The factory opening represents more than just jobs. It's about the future of our town." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. "But change brings uncertainty," he continued, "and I know there are concerns. Questions about effects, risks, even the past." Andy felt Rob tense beside him. The mention of the past drew a heated gaze from Rob, eyes darting to some old friends who had just as much lineage with Lex as they did. As the mayor spoke about the benefits and risks, a woman at the back yelled out, "What about the impact on our small businesses?" Another voice chimed in, "What's the plan for those who might lose their jobs?" The tension in the room thickened, emotions boiling over. Andy's heart raced. The past was creeping in, threatening to pulse through the air like electric current. "Those voices matter," the mayor said passionately. "We need to hear your concerns, to plan together." As he opened the floor for questions, Rob stepped forward, his voice cutting through the dialogues that swirled like shadows in the room. "What if our community isn't ready for this change? We can't afford to put profit over our people." More murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Andy felt pride swell at Rob's words, but beneath it lay a knot of fear. How would those in power react? Just then, Lex slipped in quietly, his eyes scanning the room quickly. They locked for a heartbeat, and an unspoken challenge passed between them. Lex smiled, a grin that sent a chill up Andy's spine. What was he planning? With every question and answer, tension rolled through the crowd. Doubts flared, other ideas ignited, and it felt like the fabric of their community was at stake. As the discussion turned heated and the atmosphere thick with unresolved tensions, Andy felt a surge of determination. We need to stand together, he thought. Just then, a hand shot up from the back of the room, a voice filled with anger and desperation. What is really going on behind the scenes? Is there something we're not being told? The room buzzed with anticipation. Andy's heart pounded. What secrets were hiding in the folds of their town's future? Would those shadows reveal something about Lex, or worse, about themselves? As the spotlight turned toward the new speaker, the brothers realized that the night was spiraling into uncharted territory, and the past wasn't done with them yet. What would be revealed in the heat of the moment? The atmosphere crackled as the crowd turned their gazes toward the back of the room. Everyone wanted answers, and Andy felt the weight of their expectations. The speaker stood, a woman in her 30s with fiery red hair and cheeks flushed with emotion. She wasn't just asking questions. She was pushing for a change, igniting something within the crowd. Are we really going to trust them? She continued, sweeping her hand toward the mayor and the businessmen. They've done nothing for us in years. How do we know they care about our families, our livelihoods? Andy watched as murmurs began to swell, voices mingling like a rising tide. He felt the energy shift from anxious hesitance to a simmering defiance. It was as if the accumulated frustrations of the past were surfacing, threatening to overflow. Beside him, Rob's jaw worked, clenching in determination. People are afraid, he said quietly yet firm, and we need to acknowledge that. Fear makes us react, makes us defensive. We can't just push these feelings aside as we make decisions about the future. The mayor's brow furrowed, and he opened his mouth to respond, but the audience was no longer willing to wait for reassurances. A low rumble of voices built into a crescendo of discontent. Someone shouted, "What about the pollution? What about our kids?" Suddenly, Lex stepped forward, cutting through the agitation like a knife. The room fell silent as he projected an air of confidence. Everyone, hold on a second. I know it's easy to blame the factory for all our problems. But if this is about job creation and a chance to revitalize our community, shouldn't we explore those opportunities? Andy bristled at Lex's smoothness, the way he acted as if he held the keys to everyone's future. There was something about the way Lex spoke that made Andy's skin crawl, as if he was trying to manipulate the crowd with charm and cunning tactics. Still, the tension was palpable. People leaned forward, caught in a moral tug-of-war. Did they take a chance on change or cling to what was familiar, even if it was crumbling? Frustration threaded through the air, clashing with the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come of it all. Look, we can't ignore the concerns, someone else called out from the left. But we also can't let fear guide our actions. We need to find a balance. Rob turned to Andy, his eyes ablaze. We need to stand up. Why don't we get people to talk about their fears? This isn't just about us. His voice dipped lower. It's about everyone who is afraid of losing their way of life. Before Andy could respond, another hand shot up to speak. This time, an elderly man whose face bore years of hard work and loss. I lost my family farm to the last big development, he said somberly. They promised jobs then, too. Where are they now? His words hung heavily in the air. The crowd went silent, reflecting on his pain. The old man cleared his throat to continue. We're all scared, but we're also strong. Let us voice our fears, our doubts, together. Andy's heart thudded in his chest. That was it. We need to create a forum, a place where everyone can share, he suddenly found himself saying. Not just the negatives but ideas on how to move forward. Rob nodded, his expression shifting from anxiety to resolve. The room seemed to breathe with them, a collective agreement lingering just out of reach. At that moment, Lex's smirk melted away, replaced with something darker. Suddenly, he stepped down from his place, moving toward them with purpose. What are you two planning? Because if you think you can just open up discussions and ignore the realities of business, you're mistaken. His voice dripped with challenge, and the crowd froze. Andy felt adrenaline racing through him. Who would back them? Would anyone dare? The question lingered like a tightrope, teetering above uncertainty. Would they fortify their bond, facing the storm ahead together? Or would Lex's fear-mongering unravel everything they had? As the room charged with anticipation, a single thought echoed in Andy's mind, setting his pulse racing. In this fight for their future, who truly had the power? Tension hung in the air like smoke after a fire, each heartbeat of the crowd syncing with Andy's racing thoughts. He searched the faces, looking for allies, someone who might step forward and cement this fragile alliance. The energy shifted, and murmurs broke like waves against a rocky shore. Rob turned to Andy, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you think we should say something?" he whispered. Before Andy could respond, another voice broke through the noise, a woman from the back of the room. "What if we come together and share our stories? What if our fears unite us?" There was a ripple of recognition passing through the crowd. Heads nodded, and faces softened at the idea of collective storytelling. It was a softening. It was expression. Lex noticed too, his smile back, but it was no longer inviting. It was cold. "Stories don't pay the bills, folks," he interjected, eyes darting between the speakers and the crowd. "This isn't a therapy session. This is a critical decision about progress. You really think spinning tales will change anything?" The crowd gasped audibly, anger flaring like sparks from a struck match. "But aren't our lives worth more than just numbers?" Andy countered, his voice rising in defiance. "We are more than statistics." Each phrase resonated, echoed by a swell of voices rising in agreement. "Yes," said the elderly man again, his voice steadier now. "We need to reclaim our narratives. We deserve to be heard." Rob took a step forward, emboldened. "Let us have a forum, a series of meetings. We can listen, share, and truly understand." His passion was infectious. People leaned closer, desperate for clarity, connection. Lex's smirk tightened into a grimace. "So you plan to waste time on these gatherings while the rest of the town moves forward? You think that will keep our jobs safe?" But the tension was thickening, and someone shouted back, "Jobs won't mean anything if we lose our community." It was a shift. A collective moment of solidarity was taking root. Andy's heart raced as he spotted a woman at the front of the room, tears glistening in her eyes. She raised her palm, shaky but resolute. "My husband works at the factory. If it's closed, what then? Who cares for our families?" Her pain cut through the bravado, revealing a raw truth. The crowd burst forth with voices of fear, stories intertwining like threads in a tapestry of shared struggle and resilience. Andy felt a lightness, a moment when fear transformed into something more palpable. Hope began to weave through their collective narrative, knitting them together. "Let us hold hands," Andy suggested, trying to solidify this unity. "If we can stand together, we can face anything, even Lex." In a thrilling surge of connection, hands reached across the rows, clasping tightly. It was a living, breathing display of communal strength. Lex's face darkened as he realized their resolve was stronger than his challenges. But his voice sliced through like glass. "This won't end well for you. The machine of business is relentless. You think a few meetings will change anything?" In that moment, Andy felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. Could their newfound strength withstand the onslaught of opposition? What would happen when the crowds thinned and reality set back in? He took a deep breath, absently gripping Rob's arm, waiting for the answer to surface. As Lex turned, anger radiating from him, Andy could see the battle lines being drawn. The question hung in the space between them. What lengths would either side go to win this fight? The crowd waited, breathing collectively, poised on the brink of change. There was only one way forward, and it lay through the unknown. Would they remain united in this fragile moment? Or would their newfound courage buckle under the weight of substantial reality and fear? The murmurs swelled, a tide of voices rising to meet the challenge. Andy felt the connection pulsing through the group, but doubt clawed at his insides. He glanced at Lex, who stood with arms crossed, a dark cloud brewing over him. "Listen up," Lex barked, pushing his way through the link of hands. "This isn't just about you or a couple of stories. This is a business decision. The factory isn't just part of our town. It's our livelihood. My livelihood. He eyed Andy with disdain. You really think sharing your sob stories can change what needs to happen? The tension snapped like a taut string. Voices erupted in angry retorts, but Andy felt something shift again. He could see it in the faces around him. They all had stories, scars, dreams mingling together in an unbreakable bond. A younger man with a baseball cap, his voice shaking with emotion, yelled, "But we're worth more than just numbers on a balance sheet." Exactly. Another woman jumped in, her passionate stance echoing in her stance. We deserve to fight for our lives, our homes. This isn't about dollars. It's about family. Andy felt something inside him ignite. The weight of uncertainty transformed into a fire of possibility. You're right, he shouted, voice gaining strength. We have the power. Let us show Lex that our voices matter more than profit margins. Let us turn our stories into a battle cry for change. Weakness flickered through Lex's eyes, shadowed by anger. He glanced around, perhaps feeling the churning energy of resistance he wasn't counting on. The crowd roared its support, the sound swelling like a wave. As Andy raised his voice, he thought about the stories in the room, the pain, the triumphs, the little victories that colored their lives. We may face hardship, but we come together, and that makes us stronger. No one can take that from us. Suddenly, Rob, aglow with newfound courage, shouted, "Who's with us? Let us form a committee, plan protests, demand our right to be heard." Chaos erupted, excitement mingling with fear, but one thing rang clear. They were done being silent. Andy felt the pulse of unity push through the crowd. They were ready to fight, armed not with weapons but with their voices and stories. Lex's smirk cracked, revealing a hint of desperation beneath his bravado. "This isn't over," he warned, glancing around as if weighing his options. "You think this uproar will scare them? Companies don't bow to outbursts." Andy stepped forward, challenge in his eyes. "Then let us make sure they register our roar. We need to stand together no matter what." In that charged moment, the crowd locked eyes with each other, conviction burning brightly in their hearts. They were ready to follow through, but doubts loomed heavy. What would happen next? Andy felt the atmosphere shift once more. As hope sparkled in the air, an even bigger question hung unexpectedly. Would their voices actually reach the ears of those in power? And would they find a way to secure their community's future before it was too late? Andy took a deep breath, his heart hammering. The struggle ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be theirs. A fresh wave of determination coursed through him. The time for talk was ending. Action loomed just around the corner. But just then, a sound erupted from outside, a low rumble that echoed through the building. A vehicle too heavy, too menacing, rolled down the path toward their sanctuary. The collective breath of the crowd hitched in their throats, a shared moment of dread sweeping over them. What was coming for them? Would their courage hold firm against this looming threat? Their resolve faced a test unlike any they had prepared for. The tension in the room escalated as the sound of the approaching vehicle drew closer. Andy's heart raced, thumping wildly against his chest. What kind of intimidation tactic was this? He felt the group's fear hanging thick in the air, weaving through their shared anticipation. Lex stood to the side, uncertainty creasing his brow, the bravado of a few moments ago fading fast. The voices around Andy morphed from defiance to nervous whispers. He glanced around, seeking reassurance in the faces surrounding him. The fire that had ignited moments before now flickered, threatened by the ominous rumble. "Stay strong," Andy urged, his voice steady despite the chaos brewing within. "We've come too far to give up now." He watched as a mixture of determination and fear ignited in the eyes of his friends. They were still with him. A shadow crept across the doorway. Then the heavy vehicle came into view, marked, imposing, and utterly unyielding. The crowd shifted uneasily. Andy's throat tightened. Would they really take the plunge into conflict, standing firmly against whatever power hovered at their door? A door swung open, and a figure stepped out, tall, sharp-suited and confident. It was Mr. Grayson, the factory's regional director, a man synonymous with corporate indifference. He surveyed the gathered crowd, a smirk creeping onto his lips as he adjusted his tie. Well, what have we here? He drawled, his voice smooth yet condescending. A little party, I see. And what exactly do you think you're accomplishing with this little gathering? Andy clenched his fists, feeling the world narrow around him. We're standing up for our rights, he shouted back, defiance lacing his tone. We won't let you take what's ours without a fight. You think shouting will change anything? Mr. Grayson's laughter echoed mockingly against the walls. Those so-called stories don't matter to the company. We look at profits, not pitches. You're wasting your breath. A murmur rippled through the crowd, tension thickening like fog. Andy could sense Lex weighing his options, still reeling from the unexpected arrival. Let me remind you, Mr. Grayson continued, his eyes glinting with a predatory edge, the factory is ours to manage. We won't hesitate to make necessary cuts, they are already in the works. Do you really want to push it further? The crowd gasped collectively, indignation rising like smoke. Andy's heart pounded in his ears. How could they sit idle when their worst fears were laid bare before them? He stepped forward, raising his voice above the discontent brewing. We're worth more than numbers. Our stories matter. We are the heart of this community. Lex's eyes darted between Andy and Mr. Grayson. They needed a plan, a way to channel their anger into something tangible. Do you have a better option? He finally asked, uncertainty flickering behind his walls. He was starting to see it, the resolve illuminated in the crowd. They had something to fight for. Maybe together they could stir the pot. We need to unite, Andy said firmly, adrenaline coursing through him. Let us create a petition, gather support, anything. We must show them we're more than just a footnote in their budget sheets. Just then, a small spark of hope flickered within the crowd, igniting faces, each person's resolve resurrecting in the wake of fear. Behind them, the factory loomed, a titan of challenges and change. But would it be enough? As the shadows danced longer across their shelter, the question loomed larger. How far would they have to go to be heard? And at what cost would they embrace this fight for their futures? The tension inside the community center hung thick, electric with anticipation. Andy stood at the helm of the converging voices, feeling the spirit of his neighbors surging forward. The room buzzed with the resurrection of hope, spirits lifting like a banner unfurling in the wind. Together, we can make them listen, Andy proclaimed, his voice cutting through the murmurings like a knife. The last words of Mr. Grayson still echoed in the air, a dark reminder of what they were fighting against. But now, something raw and fierce ignited within the crowd. They each held a story, a life twisted by the economic tides, and here they were, ready to reclaim their narrative. Rob stepped beside Andy, determination etched into his features. We will fight for our community, he exclaimed, and the room erupted with fervor, neighbors clasping hands and raising them high. Fueled by the possibilities of unity, even Lex found himself inching towards solidarity. Though he barely knew what it felt like to believe in something real, it began to catch fire in him. Mr. Grayson flicked a dismissive gaze to the crowd, but the bluster of his bravado faltered when he saw the unity in their eyes. He cleared his throat brashly. What you don't understand is that no petition can halt progress. At the end of the day, it's about the numbers. But before he could finish, a voice rang out from the back, an older gentleman holding a worn-out cap. What is progress if it leaves families behind? Your numbers will crumble if the heart of this town is in shambles. His words struck a chord, igniting a fresh wave of emotion. The unyielding solidarity there, the chorus of support, that idea that meant everything. Andy felt his heart swell with pride. They were not just voices. They were a powerful force. Determined, Andy took the microphone. Listen, we may not have what it takes to stop the opening of the factory, but we have everything it takes to be heard. Each of us carries a story that matters. We'll illustrate that this factory isn't just a building. It's our heritage, our future. With each word, he felt the room shift in energy. Neighbors nodded, tearful eyes attuned to his messages. Someone called out, "Yes, we want transparency. Let us demand a town hall meeting with the executives." Shouted another voice. "Let us get their attention." Energy built like an upward spiral, voices melding together into one solid message. They would not be brushed aside. Collectively, they would pool their narratives, painting a vivid picture of what this factory truly represented, not a mere hole in the ground for profit, but a risk to what they collectively held dear. "Let us gather stories, documents, anything we can use," Rob added, his voice steady and resolute. "We can approach the media, the local press. They can help us amplify our voice." A rallying cry arose, contagious and infectious. Individuals began to break into smaller groups, organizing plans, jotting down names, setting meetings, and their footsteps rang determined against the concrete floor. It felt monumental, like their little town was awakening from a long slumber. Even murmurs of doubt in the backdrop gave way to the thundering confidence swelling among them. But the spotlight turned back to Mr. Grayson, who remained unmoved. He had watched their determination shift from whispers of fear to a coherent rallying cry. Determination carved deeper lines into his rigidity. In a final attempt to sway them, he stepped forward. "Make all the noise you want. You know how these things work. I promise you the factory will open and your cries will drown in the winds of change," he said smugly, but the cracks in his facade spoke volumes as the crowd grew louder, resolute against the challenges ahead. A cacophony of voices rose, chanting their desires and stories, not allowing his words to taint their courage. And in that moment of unity, a profound realization washed over Andy and Rob. This was more than a clash against a factory. This was a revival of community, a rekindling of the very essence of who they were. As they rallied together, Andy turned to Rob, tears glazing his eyes, pride swelling in his chest. "We did this together," he whispered, breaths mingling in the flickering atmosphere, the resolve rooted in their hearts. "No matter what happens now, we found our way back." Rob smiled, an expression bursting with assurance, no longer clouded by rivalry. "This is just the beginning. We'll carve a space not only for our dreams but for everyone here," he replied. A pact forged in brotherhood, firm and true. Lex, standing off to the side, could only look on, a distant figure witnessing the monumental transformation. Maybe he had been wrong. Maybe the power of community, when ignited, could dismantle even the strongest walls built on greed and cold calculations. The town rallied together, hands clasped, hearts entwined. They knew that the battle was just beginning, but with every voice proclaiming their strength, they pressed onward, ready to speak truth to power. In that moment, united against adversity, they felt color return to their lives, a sense of purpose found in the countless hearts and dreams they carried forward together. And as they ventured into the fray, they were strong, unbreakable, a chorus of stories interwoven with resilience and hope. This was their fight. Together they would rise. And now it's your turn to be part of the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories about community and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the inspiration. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this uplifting journey. True fans like you understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.